When Amara got married, she thought she was stepping into a new beginning filled with love and warmth. Instead, her first home as a wife was not her own. She and her husband, Tund, moved into his father's house in Ibadan. The house was large, full of history, and carried the weight of Chief Oladipo's authority. From the moment Amara walked in with her boxes, she could feel the air shift. Chief Oladipo's eyes followed her every move, cold and sharp, as though she had entered a place where she did not belong. At first, Amara tried to ignore it. She told herself, maybe he just needs time to know me. But it was hard to miss the way he looked at her with quiet disapproval, the way his lips tightened when she spoke, or how he dismissed her presence, as if she were a shadow in his house. He would interrupt her gently spoken suggestions with a sharp word. He would push aside the meals she cooked without comment. Even when she greeted him respectfully, his responses came short, clipped, and heavy with unspoken dislike. Little things began to pile up. A chair pulled away when she was about to sit. A remark about outsiders made at the dinner table. The way he would talk about the house, my rules, as though to remind her every single day that she was only a visitor. Amara smiled in front of everyone, but at night, in the quiet of her room, she often fought back tears. Deep inside, she knew this house was not hers, and maybe it was never meant to be. Amara woke up each morning determined to prove herself. She wanted to show everyone in that house that she was not just a new wife, but also part of the family. She swept the compound before the sun was fully up, cooked breakfast for the household, washed clothes, and even made sure Chief Oladipo's favorite meals were prepared just the way he liked them. When guests came around, she welcomed them with a smile, serving them drinks and food as if it were her father's house. She thought, if I keep giving my best, maybe one day they will accept me. But no matter how much effort she put in, it always seemed like nothing was enough. Chief Oladipo had a way of cutting her down with words that pierced deeper than knives. If she served him food, he would push the plate aside and say, "Did I ask you for this?" If she tried to offer an opinion, he would snap, "Keep quiet, this is not your home." Those words became a constant echo in her ears. Every time she heard them, she felt a piece of her spirit shrink. The hardest part was that her husband, Tund, said nothing. He sat at the same table, heard the same insults, and watched the same humiliations unfold, yet he kept silent. Sometimes his eyes softened as if he wanted to defend her, but then he would look at his father and swallow his words. Amara understood he was torn between the two people he loved, but his silence hurt her more than Oladipo's harshness. It made her feel alone, as if she had no ally in the very place that was supposed to be her home. At night, when the house was quiet, Amara often lay awake staring at the ceiling. She asked herself why she was the only one trying. Why did no one see her heart? She remembered her mother's words before marriage. "Marriage is patience, my daughter. Endure and you will find peace." But was peace supposed to feel like this, like walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong step would spark another humiliation? Still, every morning she woke up and tried again. She forced smiles, even when her heart was heavy. She made the stew a little spicier because she knew Tund liked it that way. She polished Chief Oladipo's shoes without him asking, only for him to wear them without a single thank you. She laughed with her sisters-in-law, even when they whispered behind her back. Day after day, Amara gave everything, yet it seemed the house only gave her coldness in return. Sometimes, when she was alone, she looked out of the window at the streets of Ibadan buzzing with life. She wondered if somewhere beyond those gates, there was a place where she could truly belong. But for now, she stayed, carrying the weight of silence, waiting for a day when she would no longer feel like a stranger in the house that was supposed to be hers too. It happened on an evening that began like any other. The family had gathered in the living room after dinner, the air heavy with the smell of palm oil stew and smoke from the generator outside. Conversations started small, but as usual, it didn't take long for tension to creep in. Someone mentioned money, another brought up a land dispute, and voices rose. Amara stayed quiet, sitting at the edge of the sofa, hoping to be invisible. She had learned that her silence was safer than saying anything. But then Oladipo turned to her. His eyes, sharp and unforgiving, landed on her as if she had caused every problem in the— "You," he said, pointing a finger. "Why are you sitting there like you own this place? Don't forget, this is not your home." Amara's cheeks burned. She opened her mouth, not to argue, but to explain herself softly, maybe to calm him. Before she could say a word, his voice thundered over hers. "Pack your things and leave this house." The words cracked through the air like lightning. The whole room fell silent. Plates clattered as someone dropped a spoon. Tund sat frozen, his eyes darting from his father to his wife. Amara's heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. Her hands trembled as she tried to steady herself. She felt the eyes of the entire family on her, some shocked, some secretly pleased, others pretending to look away. Tears stung her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She stood there, frozen, her breath caught in her chest. Every part of her wanted to run upstairs, pack her clothes, and escape the humiliation. But her legs wouldn't move. It wasn't just about the words. It was the shame of being thrown out like a stranger, the public declaration that she didn't belong. She felt stripped of dignity in front of people who should have been her family. Tun's silence cut the deepest. She searched his face for something, anything, a word, a gesture, a hand reaching out to hold her. But he sat there, lips pressed together, eyes lowered, torn but unmoving. In that moment, Amara realized she was truly alone in that house. She clenched her fists at her sides, forcing herself to breathe. Inside, a fire lit up. If she left that night, it would be in shame, exactly as Oladipo wanted. But something inside her whispered, no. One day, I will walk out of here, but not like this. Not because he pushed me. I will leave with my head high, on my own terms. She sat down slowly, not saying a word. Her silence was not weakness this time. It was a vow. Deep inside her chest, beneath the pain and humiliation, Amara made a silent promise to herself. This house will not break me. One day, I will walk out with dignity, and when I do, the world will know I was never a guest. I was a woman who built her own place. After that humiliating night, Amara knew something had to change. She could not keep waiting for respect in a house that refused to give it. So quietly, without making noise, she began to build her own path. She applied for jobs in Lagos and, after weeks of rejections, finally got one as an assistant in a small fashion store. The pay was little, but to Amara it was more than money. It was freedom in her hands. She did not tell anyone how much she earned. Every month, after sending a small part to support her parents back home, she kept the rest hidden in a small wooden box under her clothes. Each note she folded and tucked away felt like a seed for the future. Her days became longer and heavier. She worked in a Ibadan during the day, doing house chores, meeting every demand, and smiling through cold words. Then she traveled to Lagos whenever she could, juggling the job with her responsibilities at home. At night, when everyone else was asleep, Amara opened her old laptop and enrolled in an online business management course. She would sit by the dim light of a lantern, taking notes, struggling to stay awake, her eyes heavy but her spirit burning with determination. The family noticed her late nights and laughed. "Look at you," one of her sisters-in-law said, smirking. "What will a village girl like you do with books? You think you will become a big madam." Even Oladipo joined in once, shaking his head and muttering, "All this wasting of time. Women belong in the kitchen, not carrying books around." Their words hurt, but Amara never let them see the wound. She smiled, nodded, and kept her secret close. They thought she was foolish, but only she knew the dream she was building in silence. Sometimes she grew tired, sometimes her body ached so much she wanted to quit. But each time doubt crept in, she remembered that night when she was told to leave the house. She remembered the fire that rose in her chest and the promise she made to herself, that she would walk out with dignity. That memory became her fuel. On weekends, when she could escape to Lagos, she watched the fashion store's customers carefully. She studied the fabrics, the designs that sold fast, the ones people ignored, the way the owner spoke to clients. She was not just earning money, she was learning, piece by piece, what it meant to run a business. Nobody knew what she was really doing. To them, she was just the quiet wife, always busy, always tired, always scribbling in her notebook at night. But in her heart, Amara was drawing a map to a different life. She was planting seeds in secret, waiting for the day they would grow into something strong enough to carry her out of that house forever. With time, Amara's secret savings grew enough for her to take her first bold step. She had always loved fabrics, the colors, the patterns, the way clothes could make someone feel powerful. So she took the little money she had and bought rolls of Ankara fabric from the markets in Lagos. At night, she sketched designs on the back of old notebooks, simple at first, but full of her own unique touch. She found a local tailor who believed in her ideas, and together they made the first few pieces. The next Saturday, she carried her bundle of clothes to the bustling Balagan market. Her heart beat fast as she laid them out on a small borrowed table. At first, people only glanced, some walked by without interest, but one woman stopped. She touched the fabric, admired the bold cuts, and bought a dress. That single sale filled Amara with a hope she had never felt before. By the end of the day, she had sold 3 more pieces. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to whisper to her heart, this dream is possible. Week after week, she returned. She listened to customers, learned what they liked, what they wanted more of. She didn't just sell clothes, she sold confidence. Women who wore her pieces came back saying, "People asked me where I got this dress." That was all the encouragement Amara needed. She named her small brand Amara Luxe because she wanted every woman, no matter her background, to feel rich in confidence when she wore her design. Slowly, the word spread beyond the market. A friend of a friend introduced her to a small fashion show in Lagos. Nervous but determined, Amara presented her work. The applause she received that day was louder than anything she had ever imagined. Photos of her designs began to circle on Instagram. Orders trickled in, then multiplied. She saved every naira she could and reinvested it back into the business, buying better fabrics, hiring skilled tailors, and improving her finishing. One day, she woke up to a message that left her speechless. A popular Nollywood actress had worn one of her dresses to a red carpet event. Pictures of the outfit spread online, tagged with the name Amara Luxe. Within hours, her phone was buzzing with calls and messages. Celebrities, influencers, even women she had admired from afar wanted her clothes. Back in Ibadan, the family noticed her frequent trips to Lagos, but still dismissed her efforts. "So you're selling clothes in the market now," one mocked. They didn't know her designs had already touched the city, that her brand was rising like the morning sun. Amara smiled and said nothing. She kept her victories quiet, letting her work speak louder than any argument she could make. Each stitch, each sale, each smile from a satisfied customer was a reminder of how far she had come from the girl who once cried in silence. She was no longer waiting for acceptance in a house that rejected her. She was planting her own seeds in the world, and those seeds were beginning to bloom. Amara's hard work was beginning to shine, but the real turning point came when she applied for a government grant meant for women entrepreneurs. She had almost talked herself out of it. "Who will pick me?" she thought, staring at the form late at night. But she filled it anyway, attaching photos of her designs, her small sales records, and her vision for Amara Luxe. Weeks passed with no reply, and she pushed it to the back of her mind. Then one afternoon, as she was finishing with a customer in her tiny Lagos shop, her phone rang. The voice on the other end was calm but official. "Congratulations, Mrs. Amara Tund. You have been selected as one of the winners of the Women in Business grant." For a moment, Amara couldn't breathe. She sat down on the stool, her hand covering her mouth, tears welling up. She had done it. From late-night studies, from sewing in the shadows, from selling at street corners, she had risen to be recognized by the nation itself. The news spread quickly. The local media wanted interviews. They called her the young woman reshaping Nigerian fashion with Ankara. Her picture appeared in newspapers and online blogs. On TV, she spoke about her journey, her struggles, and her dream of making African fabrics global. She was confident, elegant, and radiant. Viewers who had never met her felt inspired. Women began to send her messages. "You give me hope. If you can do it, maybe I can too." Back in Ibadan, the same family who once mocked her gathered around the TV one evening, watching Amara speak. Chief Oladipo said nothing, his face unreadable. But Tund, Amara's husband, sat in silence, his heart heavy. He remembered every time his wife had been insulted in that house, every night she had cried quietly, every moment he had chosen silence instead of defending her. And now here she was, celebrated by the world, shining brighter than he had ever imagined. Shame pressed on his chest. He realized she had fought battles he was too afraid to fight, and she had done it alone. That night, when Amara returned from Lagos, Tund looked at her differently. There was no pity in his eyes, no doubt, only respect and a little guilt. He took her hand gently and said, "I should have stood by you. I see your strength now, and I am proud of you." Those words, though late, meant more to Amara than he could ever know. For the first time, she felt the balance shift. She was no longer the quiet wife shrinking in the corner of someone else's house. She was Amara, the designer, the entrepreneur, the woman whose name was on the lips of many. The girl who had once been told, "This is not your home," now had the nation calling her a voice for women, a face of resilience, and a rising star in Nigerian fashion. Amara's business had grown beyond what she once dreamed. She now had a shop in Lagos, trusted workers, and a brand name that kept climbing. Money began to flow in, not all at once, but steadily, like a stream that never dried. With every sale, every contract, every grant, she built more stability for herself. But deep inside, there was one thing she had not forgotten: the house in Ibadan where she had been told she did not belong. It happened quietly, almost like fate. Word spread that Chief Oladipo was in financial trouble. Years of debts, poor investments, and stubborn pride had begun to catch up with him. The great family house, the very one he once used to remind Amara of her place, was now listed for sale to cover his debts. The moment she heard, Amara's heart stopped for a second. She could hardly believe it. The same house that had been a place of her humiliation was now within her reach. Most people would have hesitated, afraid of the family politics, afraid of what people might say. But not Amara. She had promised herself long ago that she would leave that house with dignity, and now she saw an opportunity not just to leave, but to return on her own terms. She contacted a lawyer immediately, not with noise or pride, but with quiet determination. Every document was handled in her name, every signature placed carefully. She moved money from her savings, added her grant earnings, and closed the deal. It took weeks of paperwork, endless meetings, and patience, but finally, the papers were stamped and sealed. The house was no longer Oladipo. It belonged to Amara. She did not tell anyone. Not Tund, not her in-laws, not even her closest friends. She wanted the truth to speak for itself when the time was right. At night, she sometimes held the documents in her hands, running her fingers over her name, owner, Amara Tund. Each time, tears filled her eyes. Not tears of revenge, but of quiet victory. The same walls that once witnessed her humiliation would now carry her story of triumph. Instead of celebrating loudly, she kept living as though nothing had changed. She continued running her business, traveling back and forth, visiting the family house as if it still wasn't her. She greeted Oladipo with the same respect, even when he barely acknowledged her. She cooked for the family, smiled at her sisters-in-law, and stayed quiet when the old insults resurfaced. Inside, she knew the truth, that the house they all lived in was now hers, resting safely under her name. It was more than property to her. It was proof that dignity could be reclaimed, that patience could turn pain into power. She didn't need to announce it yet. She was waiting for the right moment, the day when the truth would no longer be hidden, when the house that once rejected her would finally recognize her as its rightful owner. The day came sooner than anyone expected. Chief Oladipo had been ignoring letters for weeks, thinking they were just reminders of his debts. But this particular morning, a lawyer arrived with an official notice. The house, the pride of his name, the proof of his power, had been transferred to a new owner. At first, he laughed bitterly, certain it was a mistake. But when the lawyer repeated the details, Oladipo's face drained of color. He stormed into the living room, his agbada swaying angrily as he shouted for everyone to gather. His voice shook the walls. "Who dares to take my house? Who is behind this nonsense?" The family rushed in, confused and afraid. Tun sat quietly in the corner, not understanding what his father meant. The sisters-in-law whispered, their eyes wide. Oladipo slammed the notice on the table, his hand trembling. "They say this house has a new owner. Who would dare do this to me?" At that moment, the front door opened, and Amara walked in. She wasn't rushing, she wasn't flustered. She walked with calm steps, her head high, her presence filling the room. In her hands was a brown envelope. She greeted everyone politely, then placed the envelope gently on the same table where Oladipo's notice lay. "Chief," she said softly but firmly, "there is no mistake." She pulled out the documents, each page carrying the seal of the court and her name written in bold letters. "This house is now mine. Legally, fully, and completely." For a moment, silence swallowed the room. No one moved. Oladipo's eyes darted over the papers, his lips parting in disbelief. He looked at her as though seeing her for the first time. "You," he whispered, his voice cracking. Amara's eyes did not waver. She stood tall, her voice steady. "Yes, me. The same woman you once told to pack her things and leave this house. You said it was not my home. Today, Chief, it belongs to me." Gasps filled the air. One of her sisters-in-law covered her mouth. Tun stared at his wife, a mix of shock and pride in his eyes. Oladipo's hands shook as he dropped the papers back onto the table. His chest rose and fell heavily, but he could not find words. Amara didn't shout, she didn't gloat. Her tone carried no anger, only calm strength. "I didn't fight you with insults. I didn't answer you with disrespect. I chose patience, and I built myself quietly. And now, by God's grace, this house is mine." The room was thick with tension, but also with awe. Everyone could see it. This was not the same Amara who once cried silently in the night. This was a woman who had turned her pain into power. The house that had once pushed her out now had her name written at its very foundation. And she stood there, not as a beggar, not as a stranger, but as the true owner. The room stayed silent for what felt like forever. Oladipo's eyes moved from the papers back to Amara, then back again, as if reading her name one more time would somehow change what was already written. His pride, the thing he had carried like armor all his life, finally cracked. His lips trembled, his hands shook, and suddenly the strong, unshakable Chief Oladipo sank into a chair. His shoulders slumped, and to everyone's shock, tears spilled down his face. The family gasped. This was a man they had only ever known as stern, commanding, and untouchable. To see him crying openly was something none of them had imagined. He covered his face with his hands at first, trying to hide it, but the sobs broke through, raw and heavy. His voice came out low and broken. I misjudged you, Amara. I treated you like you were nothing. I thought you were just a girl who didn't belong here. But I was wrong. I was blind." The words filled the room like thunder. His daughters stared in disbelief, their mouths slightly open. Tund lowered his head, shame running through him again, knowing he had stood silent when his wife endured so much. Even the younger relatives shifted uncomfortably, not knowing where to look. No one had ever seen Oladipo bend, much less confess. Amara stood there, calm as ever. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat. She simply watched him, her face gentle but firm. For a moment, she thought about all the nights she had cried because of him, all the times she had been told she didn't belong, all the pain she had swallowed in silence. This was the moment she could have thrown every insult back at him, but that wasn't who she was anymore. When his sobs softened, she spoke, her voice clear and steady. "Chief, I never wanted to fight you. I only wanted respect. Not gifts, not favors, just respect as a human being, as a wife, as part of this family. Respect is not demanded, it is earned. You did not see me then, but you see me now." Her words landed like a stone dropped in water, rippling through every heart in that room. No one dared to speak. The truth in her voice was undeniable. She wasn't the little bride struggling to fit in anymore. She was a woman who had carved her own place in the world. Oladipo lifted his face, streaked with tears, and nodded slowly, almost like a child being corrected. "You are right," he whispered. "I see you now." The silence that followed wasn't heavy with anger anymore. It was heavy with realization. Every member of that family saw the lesson standing right in front of them. Amara had proven herself not through shouting or fighting, but through patience, resilience, and strength. And in that moment, she taught them all that true respect can never be forced. It is something only earned, and she had earned it completely. The storm in the living room slowly gave way to silence. Everyone waited to see what Amara would do next. She held the papers in her hand, but her eyes softened as they rested on Oladipo. He looked smaller than she had ever seen him, broken in a way that almost made her forget the man who once humiliated. She took a deep breath and spoke with calm authority. "This house is mine now," she said, "but I will not throw anyone out. You are still family. Chief, you will stay here, not because you demand it, but because I choose forgiveness." The words stunned everyone. Instead of revenge, Amara had offered mercy. Tund looked at her with awe, realizing this was the strength he had failed to see all along. He reached for her hand, squeezing it as if to say, "From now on, I stand with you." From that day forward, the house changed. It was no longer a place of insults or silent tears. It became a place where respect finally had a seat at the table. Oladipo carried his regret quietly, showing Amara honor in ways he never had before. And Tund, humbled by his wife's courage, learned to defend her openly, standing by her side not just as a husband, but as a partner. The story of Amara spread far beyond the walls of that home. People repeated it, shared it, and drew strength from it. The lesson was clear, and it carried the weight of truth. They tried to throw her out, but she came back not as a beggar, but as the owner.